Hello and welcome. I'm here to talk about the Alchemist archetype and some of the myths that surround it. But first of all, my name is Stacy Couch and my website is wildgratitude.com. One of the very big myths about alchemy and the alchemist archetype is that the alchemist thinks they're trying to create gold out of lead, and that is not possible to do, and that they're foolish for thinking that they are, and anybody that says that they can is a charlatan. Right? So this is the current day narrative around the alchemist archetype, and feeling like a charlatan or being called one can be encapsulated in the experience of having this archetype. Well, what is the truth here? What's really going on? Well, we have to think about the origins of the alchemist archetype. When alchemy was practiced thousands or even hundreds of years ago, we did not have an understanding of materials at a molecular or elemental level. We didn't have the instruments to be able to discern, is this pure gold, is this pure silver, how is the molecule of a gold, you know, piece, how is that molecule configured? And we didn't have the periodic table way back when. So the definition of gold has changed over time, and we forget that. We think we're comparing our definition of gold to historical definitions of gold. Historically, gold was defined as a yellow metal that you could melt and that had a number of different properties. So it was yellow or rose gold in color. It was shiny. It was incorruptible in that it wouldn't rust or decay away. So it seemed to last forever in that way. And it also was quite soft and malleable when heated, so you could work it easily. And it also lended itself to the creation of various ornaments and objects. So that's the first piece, is like the definition of gold was different then. And also, particularly in China, there's examples of brass being considered what gold was to them. And in China, artificial gold, i.e., man made gold or brass, was considered more valuable and more noble than gold that was mined out of the mountains. So, to them, yes, the alchemists were absolutely creating gold because their definition of gold was a different definition than we have today. So, that's to kind of strip away this myth that the alchemist is a charlatan or the alchemist is trying to do the impossible and is deluded to think that they can create gold. So there's this idea of like, okay, we have to think about the historical context of how gold was defined at the time. And then we also have to think about how else we know gold, right? We understand gold as this golden state. It also can be seen as the alchemist is going after a certain inner state within themselves or a certain spiritual transcendence or experience of the divine. So that brings it into a totally different place. And through doing the work of trying to create the near impossible or the near perfect or even the perfect, that the alchemist, through that process, is refining and ennobling their own soul in the work. Another myth about the alchemist archetype is that they are purely looking at transforming lead into gold. This is really a gross oversimplification and couldn't be farther from the truth as well. Alchemists throughout human history have used hundreds of different base materials to start the work. And that starting point of the work does have a somewhat widely accepted name of the prima materia, the primary material. It's basically just saying, this is my starting point. It could be lead, it could be iron, it could be dirt, it could be muck from a swamp, it could be ashes from a fire, it could be some herbs, it can be a toad. Like it just goes on and on and on the list of different things. So the starting point for the work is not just about lead. And if somebody's telling you a story about the alchemist archetype and describing, that experience of lead and all of that, it's like that applies because the work does sometimes start with lead, but not always. So it's really important to start to expand your view when you're thinking about doing your own inner alchemical work, that you can start from wherever you are with whatever you have going on, whatever material or challenges you have in your life are your prima materia. It doesn't have to be this heavy, depressed feeling that lead brings. It could be a dried out, exhausted, burnt out feeling that comes from ashes of the fireplace, right? The exhaustion that comes with that. So there's all sorts of beginning points for the work. And then gold being the final objective. Sure, yes, gold was talked about a lot in alchemical work, but so was the philosopher's stone. It was also called the stone of the widow or the stone of the orphan in reference to the goddess Isis and her son. So that was a commonly used name. Also, the elixir of life. And the philosopher's stone wasn't always considered a stone. Sometimes it was a powder, and it wasn't gold in color. Philosopher's stone was often a deep, rich red or deep, rich purplish red color. So again, it's really and also before the last couple hundred years, the end point was often a marriage or a union of silver, the feminine principle, and gold, the masculine principle. Of course, when patriarchal structures started to take over, the role of silver and the feminine was relegated to a step below gold. So that was still a higher or more noble state, but alchemists were trying to get even beyond that to gold. So it depends what point in history you come from, what tradition you come from, or continent or culture you come from. There are different ends to the work than gold. And the last myth that I'm going to talk about, I could talk about a lot, but I want to keep this succinct for you. The last myth that I'm going to talk about is that alchemy is a pseudoscience or an early science and is imperfect and therefore should be discarded and left away in human history. Yes, we could say that science arose out of alchemy. Absolutely, we can say that. Can we say that alchemy is not something that leads us towards truth? That alchemy was inherently flawed and needs to be left behind? I don't think so. This is a really interesting narrative. It's where we come into this idea of separation of church and science, church and state, right? Alchemy was always and will always be about the working together of religion and science. The two weren't separate before. I love what Marie von France says about this. She says actually that the conflict between science and spirituality is a pseudo problem because both are the search for the ultimate truth. We forget that. We think science is searching for the ultimate truth and religion or spirituality is about belief. But alchemy just ignores this problem of science and religion not mixing, and alchemy is the two together. This construct of separating them. The word science itself means to separate, schism, is a construct. And alchemy was very much this spiritual pursuit to understand the workings of the world. Wonder and awe of the spiritual life go hand in hand with discovery and exploration of the scientist. And that's really what I love about the work. And we see scientists today who are very devout, who have a deep faith in one spirituality or religion or another, and then there's no contradiction for them. And that's very much the alchemist archetype in the light, where somebody can realize I can do empirical science and I can also believe in something I can't measure. I can try to measure it and also know that I may never be able to, or that there's this dialectic going on between the spirit realm and the natural world, physical realm in front of us. Author Chris Gosden says that although apparently different, magic, and I would put in parentheses alchemy, and science have much in common. Both strive to understand how the world works and the manner in which people benefit from its workings. You may think of Isaac Newton as one of the very first scientists, as one of the very first physicists. And historians are starting to rewrite that narrative and talk about him as one of the last true alchemists, actually. He had a couple of forges in his department at the university that were running around the clock. Forges, I mean alchemical furnaces, where he was doing alchemical experiments. He was very much an alchemist and studied nature to find God's active presence in the world. He was just as much a theologian as he was a scientist, and for him there was no contradiction. That was the case until the last couple hundred years, that doing empirical science and being a spiritual person, being involved in ceremony and sacredness, the two weren't separate. The two were one and the same. And so by engaging with the alchemist archetype in your own life, you're starting to bring those two fields back together in the way that they belong. Because it's both about the study of the unknown, it's both about the study of things that we capture our fascination, our imaginations, and trying to learn more about the inner workings of the cosmos. Okay, there's one more thing that I want to share with you. And that is this myth that we think of alchemists in history as these specialists, these kind of obscure pseudoscience magician occultists that were off on the fringes doing this weird independent thing. And alchemy is often viewed from today's lens as this independent discipline that has fallen away. Such a myth. Alchemy did not exist in a vacuum. It was absolutely fully embedded, fully enmeshed with many other disciplines. To name a few, we have metallurgy and jewelry making. Think about the Egyptians and how they made jewelry for their pharaohs in the tombs. That was a very sacred act, very ceremonial, and also very practical. Like, you have to know how to work metals, you have to know how hot to heat the fire. Fiber dyeing is also very much part of it. Embalming, perfumery, and cosmetics. Alchemists very much combined with those disciplines. And then pharmacy and medicine. Throughout history, a lot of doctors and pharmacists, those who practice medicine of varying different kinds, were also alchemists. They were putting their concoctions over a fire, they were heating it for certain amounts of time, they were using metals and making metals in their medicines for people. Are using metals in their medicines for people. And then cooking. This is one of my favorite ones. For those of you who are looking to work with the alchemist archetype in today's day and age, and you don't have access to a fancy laboratory, your kitchen is a great place to engage with the alchemist archetype within on a hands-on, tactile, practical level. I love it. The cooking is great. For those of you who love to cook, this is a new perspective for you to think about. Wow, do I have the alchemist archetype? How much am I engaging with this archetype? How important of an aspect of my personality is this? So cooking is a fun one, and I talk a lot about that in my Heart of the Alchemist Archetype course. So speaking of my course, it's currently on a launch sale through April 24th, 2026. So if you're watching this video down the road, the launch sale's over, but I will offer other sales down the road in the future, so you can always check the link to see. And I've put a link to the course in the description of the video below, so please go ahead and check that out. There's a couple of course samples. It is an audio course. It's on demand. You can do it at your own pace. There's a 37-page workbook that you can download and work through, and a ton of references. I've done a lot of research, years worth of research to put this course together. And there's this little video I've just provided for you is just barely scratching the surface. These are some of the fun topics we get to explore and learn about in the Heart of the Alchemist Archetype course. So I hope that you sign up, you enjoy it, let me know what you think. And if you have any questions or comments about this video, absolutely put them in the comments below. Please give it a thumbs up. And you can visit my website, wildgratitude.com, anytime for info on this and other things I have going on. Thanks so much and have a lovely day.